when we're switching now, so I start off, and you just do this in your own time. You don't have to do it at any particular speed. But my arms will always be back, right? I don't never really want my hands flapping or doing this or leaning. My arms are always back as I'm doing this. And as you're switching now, I want you to think about switching from your chin to your shoulders to your hips until you're back the other way. So what I'm trying to do is use my upper body to make my lower body movement easier. So I'm going to look. I'm thinking about the easiest way. I don't really want to just move my feet and keep my upper body still here. I want to move the whole thing. So I'm going to go chin, shoulder, hip, toes, and then I step. Yeah? And then just in your own time. So you're working it, do it super side, but you're trying to use your upper body to turn the next joint down. So my chin begins to turn my shoulders, which begins to turn my hips, and I turn all the way through. So I'm driving this hip down to the ground, distributing my weight in it. And then just in your own time, from your chin to your shoulders to your hips, back onto your toes, and then you step. And we're trying to use that upper body to drive into our hip. The more you turn, look at your shoulder, the more you'll feel that hip turns and drives in. Yeah, and then when you're ready, just switch it back if you need to loosen any of this off. Reset. So I reset and we just sort of like start and get on the floor. Think about throwing that hip in and getting into the back arch. Putting that hip in as hard heavy as you can. So if you reset at any point, switching around, you need to reset when you start again. Think about that step out to the right angle and the back arch to push this hip right in. Toes are engaged on the straight leg, and then you can start playing around with, when you're in this position, playing around with that back leg, hold it for a bit, and just pushing and pulling. So I'm pushing with the bottom of my toes, I pull with the tops. Now I may reset, but I'm just getting used to moving myself around. Play with your shot, retracting your shoulders a bit more. Feel what that does to the hip pressure. It basically takes it down. But I always want to be able to switch from being like my toes are pulling, to being pushing. So we're just getting used to that. But they're always doing something. They're never just kind of walking. And then if we want to switch, we go from our chin to our shoulders to our hips, thinking about the back arch. To get that hip, get that turn coming all the way through. and then start to add in some stacks. So we talked about stacking yesterday. So I can stack a few different ways on this. I can stack on my shoulders, I can stack on my head. So the difference is basically going to be, you know, I'm leaning my shoulder. So my hips are coming high here. And you can play with those to neutral as well if you want. So I'm just kind of here. But I'm working my shoulders in as well now. Just putting a shoulder in. So this one has shoulder rotation. If you go to your head and you start posting on your head, this is where you don't want to shoulder rotate. Because shoulder rotation is what's going to, like turning my shoulders is what's going to turn me over. That's what's going to get me sweat. So that was what Steve Whittier was talking about in a video I posted on Sunday. Was about, he was lower down, but he was keeping the shoulders retracted. He was trying to stop them from turning. And feel, if you pull your shoulders back, just put a little bit of weight in your head. I'm not getting too high with this. I don't want to into my neck or warming up. But like I'm retracting. So keep my shoulders retracted. And you should be able to feel it's quite, even if I get off my toes, actually, if I keep my shoulders back, it's actually quite hard for them to roll. Yeah, and then I can get back into a sprawl if I need to, which is what he was talking about, working on a sprawl. And the whole time I'm here, of course, the person I'm rolling with is taking all my weight. Yeah, so you can start working in two different types of stack depending on how your neck feels. I'll work your shoulder work. Think about it, if I want to push my shoulder into something, I usually look the opposite way. So if my right shoulder is connected, I look to my left shoulder. Now all my weight is going in my left shoulder, toppling it. I'm putting everything on it. If he tries to lift me, I've got my sprawl. I'll just drop that leg back. You want to see that? So he tries to get here, he tries to lift me. So I'm putting a lot of pressure on him, he tries to lift me, I sprawl. Just take the hips low, I feel I'm getting control. Retract the shoulders. The back arch is when we retract the shoulders as well. Spinal flexion. So really try, if you're smashing this in, really try and imagine that somebody's body is hitting that shoulder. When you put the head down, you put the balls away if you want it just to the side. But playing with how do I get these shoulders to retract because I don't want to topple, right? If I want a shoulder roll, I would be turning my thumb in. See how your shoulders, just do this for me a second. So if I wanted to do a shoulder roll, if I turn my thumb in, my shoulder comes forward. Everyone see that? So the shoulder, shoulder rolls forward. So everyone do this, so you feel it. Yeah. So if I want to do a shoulder roll now, That's kind of like the ideal line. So I now look under, I'm going to roll. Yeah. So if I'm stacking in, I don't want to roll because I don't want to end up going from being chest down to having my back on the mat. So that's what I'm trying to avoid. So if you play now with turning these back, turning your thumbs back, so I'm going the other way, like we talked about, thumb rotation here. And I can now put my foot, I'm going to bend my arms to begin with and put my head to the mat. But I'm now going to try and stay on the front of my head, and I'm just going to start going up. And you notice that the more your shoulders go back, the harder it is for you to drop. Yeah, just have a go at that. Build up to it. I think I'm used to it. I just stack my knees on my elbows. And I keep my forehead, it's always like I'm looking up as I'm into the ground. I'm kind of looking up, I keep my forehead there. And neck like this down. And then you can start putting your feet up into the air. And notice how the thumbs are changing the shoulder posture. So if I turn my thumb in, my shoulder goes forwards. So I begin to roll. Whereas if I turn it this way, it completely changes. So my thumbs are pointing out, basically Americana frames. Head forwards, knees stacked on. You can just hold this position for a bit. Think about the shoulders retracting. So anytime you feel like you're going over the top of your head, you just pull your shoulders back. And it actually recenters your center of mass. It takes your hips back so you can't topple. So it's your forehead, Luca, yeah. And now just put your knees on your elbows. You go wide with the arms if you need to. But you should be able to get your knees on the back of your elbows. Yeah. You see, the minute you retracted your shoulder, it never looks like you're going to topple. And I think this has been a mistake I've been making when trying to pass Pete's guard with a little hop, is that sometimes your shoulders, I let my shoulders go forwards as I've done the hop. And if the time's to sweep right, that's the time to sweep. But if this is back, it's very hard for somebody to elevate.
Are they going down as well?
Sorry?
Are they going down towards the hips as well, or just fully back?
Down towards the hips.
Anti-shrug.
I mean, I think the more you can retract, what starts to happen is the more I pull these back, it seems to, I think it has an effect down the chain. You know, it goes down the joints. So what it does, and I do this, it pushes this all forward, my hips end up, it pushes my hips forward. It can't help it. So by pushing the hips forward, it's causing a sprawl in the handstand. So if I'm stacking weight on and I feel him go to lift me, that's what I'm gonna, this is what I'm gonna do.
If that's what you're doing to stop yourself, then if you're pushing down, moving one way, should you then bend over, bend your shoulders down as opposed to retracting?
Well, you've got options. The other option is you can sprawl. You can actually go into you may be able to go into a sprawl. I think the answer really is for you to feel it, depending on the situation, what's right. But when I'm stacking, I'm putting all my weight into it. And I definitely want, there are these binary situations where I want all the base in the world, I want as much of my body to be connected to the ground, that's base. And I can't generate power without being connected to the ground, right? I'm in a fleeting moment. Otherwise I have to be like, but I also want all my weight on him, because I want him to carry all my weight. Because if I have complete base, unless he pushes or pulls me, he does no work. Does that make sense? The more I put on the ground, it's actually harder for him to push or pull me. The more I create friction, I connect to the ground with as much of my body as possible, rely on my centre of mass to the ground, the harder it is for him to move, the more drag I get. So he does way more work if he's pushing or pulling me. But if he's underneath me, I actually want all my weight on him until I'm not in control of it. And then I'll base again. So that's really, I think, in its essence, what grappling, forgetting like when people say jiu-jitsu or wrestling or judo, they're really talking about rule set. Because for the most part, the art will revolve around the rules, rather than the assumptions, the underlying assumptions that are made of how you gain points, of how you win. They're different in all those disciplines, and there's several different wrestling. Even at the Olympics, there's 2 wrestling, Greco and freestyle. So that's the conundrum we're constantly facing. So what I think we'll do to begin with is we'll just have Joe go with the guard. So Joe's got his knees. So I've got my. I'm gonna start like this actually. So I've got my my Kimura grip. I put his elbow, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my side at this angle. So if you see, I'm not going straight back. I'm going at an angle. So my feet are flexed underneath. He's letting me flex my feet. Yeah. I'm just going at this angle. And what I want Joe to see, like, if Joe just sort of goes, I will sweep him. So I'm going at like a skinny X line because very few people are going to have the flexibility to go straight back anyway. Right, so if you look at the angle I'm going, you see how my this shoulder is kind of aligned with this hip, and I want this shoulder spot. So I'm pulling him up. You can pull the elbow here if you want, but it's this idea, and my feet are just hooking, and I'm just going to do that sweep for now, 3 for 3, and then we're going to start using that sweep. But maybe some iron pillow, we're going to go into some different situations. And all we're going to work is everything we did on the ball. Those are our basic movements. You want to see the sweep one more time? So I'm starting with an underhook, Kimura frame. If I was like this, he can sit back. Yeah, even when pulling his belt. And I don't want to be pulling his belt, that'd be work. So we're actually starting like this. He's giving me his weight, he's letting me do the sweep. My feet are flexed, so my big toes are pointing to my knees. This is pulling in, chin to shoulder. And all I'm really doing is dropping at this line of his hip to my shoulder line. It's kind of like an X. Yeah? Let's give it a go.